Colorado isn't cheap. It doesn't rank in the top 10 most expensive states, but it's not that far behind either. And if you're thinking about moving here in 2025, the cost of living will hit harder than you think, especially if you're coming from the Midwest or the South. Most people see the mountains, the lifestyle, the sunshine, and think, yeah, I could make this work. But then you check the cost, and suddenly you're crossing town after town off your list. So should you just entirely forget about Colorado? I wouldn't go that aggressive. But let's break down the numbers first before you decide to move here. The first painful cost to look at is housing. It's going to be one of, if not the biggest expense in this video. No surprise. Whether you're renting or buying, this is where Colorado really stretches your budget. As of 2025, the median home price for the state as a whole sits around $561,000. But let's be real, that number jumps drastically depending on where you're looking. In places like Boulder or parts of Denver, you're really looking at $700,000 and up. But even crossing the $1 million for something sizable and recently built. Want to buy in a ski town like Breckenridge or Steamboat? Well, the price starts going, you know what, let's just focus on the Front Range for now. Also, if you're renting, it's not much easier. In the Denver metro, expect to pay anywhere from $1,700 to $2,200 a month for a 1-bedroom. Some areas like Colorado Springs or Longmont are slightly more affordable, but not by much. Now, 2-bedroom apartments, you're looking at roughly $2,200 to $2,800 a month. And that's not luxury living. That's just clean and updated, usually. Even in so-called affordable markets like Pueblo or Greeley, the prices have still gone up. You can find cheaper housing, but usually at the cost of location, commute, or condition. Bottom line here, if you're coming from a low-cost state, this might hit harder than expected. Housing in Colorado isn't California level bad, but I'd say anything called affordable relative to affordable 10 years ago is ridiculous. You've got to be strategic about where you land and what you're willing to trade for it. Now, next to talk about is transportation. And this in Colorado really depends on where you live. Now, I will say for most people, a car isn't optional. If you're in downtown Denver or Boulder, yeah, you can get away with using public transportation or biking around. But for the vast majority of people living in the suburbs or more rural towns, you're driving, period. Let's start with gas. Now, I won't give you an exact breakdown on the cost of gas because one, there's such a spread depending on where in the state you are, and two, by the time you see this video, it's probably changed. Generally though, the cost is more expensive in mountain towns and slightly cheaper near the cities, although not always and not consistently. I will say your overall monthly cost is going to be relatively high, especially if you're a commuter. Then you've got insurance, which surprisingly is pretty high in Colorado, like one of the more expensive states in the nation high, primarily due to weather, risk of hail damage, and an increasing number of accidents and thefts in the state. If you want any more information on that kind of stuff, I have a link below. Toss in registration fees, which can be insanely high depending on the county. Emission checks, and just the general upkeep of your vehicle. It's not a cheap setup. Public transit, it does exist, but I'd say it's relatively limited. The RTD system in Denver does work, but it's not encompassing of all the suburbs. And honestly, if you're on the outskirts of Denver, just forget about it. Moral of it all, you need a car. Now let's talk about the cost just to live here, day in and day out. Groceries, not outrageous, but not cheap. That might be consistent across the country. You're probably looking at around $400 plus per person, but again, it's really dependent upon how much you eat. I eat a lot, so I'm about $500 to $600 plus. If you got a big family, well, multiply. Shopping smart helps definitely, but even then, the overall cost is still generally high, especially compared to 2 years ago. Not to mention just eating out at a restaurant. And I'm not even talking a fancy restaurant. Basic restaurants anywhere in Colorado can rack up a bill like $30 plus a person. And then anything upscale, I'm thinking 50 plus, maybe even $100 plus, depending on the restaurant and including a tip. If you're trying to budget your food, I'd recommend eating mostly at home. At this point, even McDonald's is expensive. Now for utilities, this is where it can sneak up on you. A typical home or apartment, I'd say, runs anywhere from $200 to $500 plus. Again, depending on the size and the season. Winters in Colorado can hit your heating bill pretty hard, especially if you're living in a bigger house. Internet alone is around $100 plus a month, depending on your provider. Now, one thing to note here is water. Since Colorado is a drier state, water is a bit more expensive. Now, mentioning this, one thing you'll see with new construction is the general lack of a backyard, specifically grassy backyards. They may have little sections of it, but one of the main reasons is to minimize minimize the water use. So if you're coming from a state where you've had a big backyard, I would say set your expectations here. Plus, all it takes is one look at your water bill and you'll realize why nobody has massive backyards. But then here's the part no one really talks about, and it's all the extra costs of daily life. After the bare necessities, your specific lifestyle you have might nudge you to spend a little more. For example, people who love to hike, you may come into Colorado and say, I'm gonna hike once a month. And the next thing you know, you have $300+ worth of hiking equipment and gear. Good outdoorsy stuff is kinda expensive. Moral of it all is, on top of just paying pretty much your entire paycheck to survive, then you have to factor in all your hobbies and activities too. Obviously not a shocker, but life is expensive now. So after all this, is Colorado even worth it in 2025? That depends on what you value. If you're looking just at dollars and cents, probably not. It's not the worst state in the country, but unless you're coming from Cali or Hawaii, the price change is going to be a shock. You're not saving money by moving here. You're spending more money for less square footage, more traffic, especially around Denver, and some harsher winters. That's just the truth. But what exactly are you buying? Because this isn't just about cost. It's also about what you get in return. I'd say you're buying for access to open space, to real mountains, to trails, clean air, and that feeling of freedom when you drive west on I-70 and watch the world open up. In a sense, you're buying a lifestyle that's tough to replicate. For a lot of people, that trade is worth it. You don't move to Colorado necessarily to save money, you move here to live differently. And if that kind of life matters to you, if you're willing to budget for it and build around, then yeah, it's worth every penny. With that being said, we probably need to discuss the market here first. So check out this video on Colorado's overall housing market for 2025. I think it'll clear some stuff up. This is Life on the Front Range. I'll see you there.